Welcome to episode 242 of Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers. I'm your host, Angela Watson, and I'm here to speak life, encouragement, and truth into the minds and hearts of educators and get you energized for the week ahead. Today, I'm speaking a little bit more off the cuff than I usually do, and just sharing some thoughts and observations about whether this is collectively our toughest school year yet. And I'll share some perspectives that can help you keep pushing forward. Visit truthforteachers.com to get the transcript and a shareable blog post version of this episode. Educators, I know you're juggling a lot of plates this year. Every teacher every day wants to make the juggling smoother with its new website available at zero cost. With a searchable database of free lesson plans and resources, Every Teacher Every Day provides a diverse community of wise and witty educators to engage with. I love the idea behind this website. It's practical with heart and humor, and it's totally free. Join the community now by going to everyteachereveryday.org/truth for teachers. That's everyteachereveryday.org/truth for teachers. If you and your coworkers are feeling burnt out and overwhelmed, and your administrators feel helpless to do anything about it, let them know about the 40-hour leadership program. It's an offshoot of my 40-hour teacher workweek program, and it's designed to create change at the school level to help everyone in the building stay focused on what really makes a difference for kids and streamline or eliminate the rest. 40-hour leadership can be joined at any time. It's an entirely self-paced online course for administrators, and it requires a very small investment of time up front in order to begin reimagining systems and simplifying processes to save everyone in your school building time and energy every single day. We can work with your school to acquire grant funding and professional development money to cover the cost via purchase order. And we offer additional consulting packages for personalized coaching and support. Go to 40htw.com to learn more about 40-hour leadership, 40-hour instructional coaching, and our 40-hour fast track program for teachers that's recently opened again to new members. That's 40htw.com. Have you ever wondered what other career options might be possible for you? Daphne Williams of the Teacher Career Coach has lots of resources to help you translate your classroom work experience into skills that are highly sought after in the corporate world. Her course includes resume templates and guidance, contact information for companies that frequently hire teachers, and all the support and community you need to find your next career or build a side hustle if you're not ready to leave the classroom. So whether you're just curious about your options or you're on the fence, start with the free quiz to identify careers that might be a good fit. Just go to teachercareercoach.com/truth for teachers or click the link in the show notes. You'll find special free resources that Daphne designed just for Truth for Teachers listeners. That's teachercareercoach.com/truth for teachers. So the title of this episode is this our toughest school year yet? And I want to start off by saying that we are all living very different experiences. And some educators are actually finding this to be a pretty good year. They're happy to be back in person with their students, and they're really enjoying their work. I never want to paint an entirely dystopian portrait of what schools are like. And if you are giving up hope, please know that I regularly hear from teachers who have wonderful administrators and feel pretty well supported in their work. So it's not all lost. Everything is not hopeless. All schools are not terrible. All teachers are not miserable at this moment. And if you're content right now, I see you and I acknowledge you. This episode, though, is really for the folks whose answer to the question, is this our toughest year yet, is actually yes. This year is so much harder than last year, and I'm drowning. I wanted to talk about that a little bit in this episode and highlight just some overall patterns that I'm seeing. I don't want to get too bogged down into specific problems because you're living them every day. You don't need details about them. I just want to share a big picture overview of what this year has been like so far for so many teachers, just so that you can feel validated and seen and not alone. Because every time I talk about problems in education, there are always multiple people who respond by saying, I had no idea that this was happening everywhere. I thought it was just me. I thought it was just my school. I thought it was just my district. And I think when we realize that these are systemic problems and not individual problems, then we're able to look at the solutions differently. So I want to share some things that could be helpful for you in making this school year just a little easier to handle and thinking about what your role is here and how do we make things better. So I think the main problem is that teaching has always been incredibly demanding, and educators were exhausted and overwhelmed even before the pandemic. And then with this abrupt transition to remote learning and hybrid learning, and then navigating how to reopen safely, there's just been a lot of change and disruption and challenges. And I think at the end of last school year, many of us thought that the worst of it was behind us, at least in the US. And I think a lot of districts started to prepare for this school year as if it was going to be the year that we were going to, quote, get back to normal. And of course, it didn't play out that way. We had another huge wave of cases right when schools were reopening. And even though things are trending in a positive direction as of this moment, I think it's become abundantly clear that our children are not who they were in 2019. For many educators and students, last school year at least had a message of grace and flexibility and maybe less testing in some instances, maybe less adherence to a normal timetable. And that just doesn't seem to be the case anymore. We're experiencing just as many challenges and disruptions now. They may be a little different, but things are certainly no easier than they were last year. But all of that talk about grace and flexibility is now out the window. It's like, okay, let's buckle down and get back on track. That's just not possible. We were moving towards something a little more child-centered and a little bit less of a frantic pace and focusing more on socio-emotional learning and building relationships and all the things that teachers want to be doing with students. It was like, finally, here's the chance to actually be able to prioritize that. And now, not only is a lot of that out the window in many schools because we need to ramp up on math and literacy instruction, but we've seen socio-emotional skills tied into this manufactured critical race theory controversy, where in places like Florida and Texas, just as two examples, something as innocuous as teaching empathy could bring the entire school under fire. So these lessons and these principles and these ways of relating to students that I think have carried so many educators through the pandemic, who made it possible to get kids to log in online during remote learning and to keep showing up even when things were just so incredibly challenging. So much of that was due to practices that teachers were doing around identity building and understanding our own thought processes, understanding our own biases, all of these things that help us understand ourselves, each other, and the world better. These things are now, not only do we not have time for them, but it's like they're actually being forbidden in some places. I did do an episode recently, by the way, about what to do if you're accused of indoctrinating students or teaching critical race theory. So go back. That was a recent episode, a couple episodes before this. And I have an episode coming out this winter that will help you understand a little bit more about what's happening right now at school board meetings and what changes are being proposed in terms of curriculum. How did we get here all of a sudden? So I will address that more in other episodes. But in summary, I think we have an already stressed out and overworked and under-resourced group of educators, which is all of us here in the U.S., who were pushed to the brink during the past 2 school years. And now we're in year 3 impacted by COVID, and the summer break was just not long enough to heal and recover from all the trauma and exhaustion. So many teachers started off this school year already burnt out. And then when you place teachers on the front lines of a culture war and have them be demonized by the public now more than ever, and expect them on top of all of this to cover for staff members who have quit, who are out sick with COVID, who are quarantined, who are out for other reasons because we just don't have any subs, and meet the needs of children who've had their entire world turned upside down and are now somehow supposed to just act the way we would have expected them to in 2019. Well, all of that is the recipe for what you're feeling and experiencing right now. Because everything I just mentioned is on top of all of the other usual stressors, just dealing with families and student behavior issues, testing, curriculum, meetings, all the other things that teachers have been dealing with for many, many years. And then you add in staff shortages and teachers having to pick up the slack and extra duties from unfilled positions and absent coworkers. It's a lot. So that's sort of my bird's eye view of why I think the school year is feeling exceptionally challenging for so many teachers. And I think that can leave us feeling hopeless because we thought it would be better by now. And it's not really clear what's going to happen next. Is it just going to be like this forever? I mean, we know we can't go back to what it was. What's coming next? What is the path forward? I did a number of episodes in spring of 2020 and fall of 2020 about reimagining education and how that was, and this still is, our moment to shape the future of how we teach children just by the way we show up for them each day. Just by the things that you focus on, by the policies that you create in your classroom, just by the way that you relate to your students, the way you communicate with them. Your daily work is the reimagining. You showing up for your students in the best way you know how, and continuing to center what you know is best despite a system that is crushing all of us. That is the revolution. Continuing to work on being the best version of yourself, to let go of all of those old just coping mechanisms and trauma and baggage and biases and things that we've just picked up along the way, just trying to work through a very difficult environment, shedding all of that and just showing up as the truest, best version of yourself and helping your students become the same. That's the revolution. That's the resistance. That is the reimagining of education. If we have learned anything from this pandemic, it's that the folks with all the power and the money are not going to reimagine a system that benefits them. Change is coming, but we can see all around us in all kinds of industries right now. It's coming from the workers. It's coming from the grassroots level. It's not coming from the top. And so the way that forward, as I see it, will be led by humans in education who are willing to be brave. Because we're at a breaking point where everyone in the system feels powerless. And that includes students, and that includes their families. So when we're looking at the way that folks are acting out this year, when students are exhibiting more behavioral issues, when they're having trouble, exhibiting appropriate social interactions in class, in being respectful of themselves, of their peers, of their teachers, of the school building, when we see families cursing teachers out and just acting with foolishness, remember, we're all at a breaking point and we all feel powerless. That's the root problem. When people feel like they have no power and they're in a bad situation, they're desperate. And it's like nothing matters anymore. That's how you end up making really bad choices because you don't see that you have a lot of alternatives. And you feel like no matter what you do, it's not going to really change things. It's not going to really fix things. So what's even the point? And I think that's what we've seen for a lot of our students. I think they've seen in the way that COVID was handled, they realized that the school as a system, not you as the teacher or the principal or the actual people in the building necessarily, but school as a system doesn't care about them, right? The same way that you as a teacher have probably realized this system does not care about me. They don't care about my health. They don't care about my workload. They had me doing hybrid learning, teaching concurrently, online and in person, which is 2 jobs, but never gave me a pay raise, never gave me a stipend. Like, just people are realizing how disposable we are to these systems, right? We see that in the food service industry. We see that all over the place in this economy right now as people are realizing they are being treated as disposable resources to be used up and then replaced. And we feel powerless. And I think that's a big part of where all of this tension is and a lack of hope. This is a breaking point. And so when we see that educators at all levels of the system have left, are leaving, or are thinking about leaving, we don't have anything left to lose at this point. The systems in our society, not just schools, are sort of imploding right now, right? People are demanding better and demanding a change. And so things are falling apart. Many workers are not willing to settle for unsafe, underfunded, under-resourced working conditions. And I think educators really need to build on this momentum that is happening at a larger societal level. This is the moment. If you ever wanted to push back about working unpaid overtime, this is the moment, right? Because we're seeing collectively workers in all different sectors pushing back against that and saying, if I'm working, I need to get paid. Why would teaching be any different? Why are teachers contracted for 40 hours a week, but the average teacher is working 65 hours a week? That's 25 hours unpaid, expected. And if the teacher doesn't do it, the whole system collapses, right? It's propped up by teachers' unpaid labor. And we're having a labor revolution right now in our country and across the world, where systems are shifting. People are demanding better. This is our moment. There's nothing to lose at this point because the alternative is walking away. If you're thinking about quitting, if you need to quit for your own well-being and mental health, why not go down swinging? Why not try to leave a mark in the system and push things toward the better good before you go? Who knows, you may even be able to change it to a way that is acceptable to you so that you can stay longer. When I talk about courageous teaching, I mean asking for forgiveness rather than permission. I mean being quietly subversive. I mean questioning the status quo and brainstorming alternatives that simplify everyone's workload, not waiting for someone in a position of authority to come up with a better way, not complaining about it and hoping that they fix it, but thinking, what do I want to happen? If I were in charge, how would I do things? What could actually work better? Coming up with these solutions and then trying them out, implementing them, suggesting them, piloting them, doing action research to figure out a better way. A lot of the systems and procedures and policies we have in schools are not optimized. And it only takes one person to say, hey, what if we tried it this way instead? That can begin to shift everything in your school. So when I talk about courageous teaching, it's these little acts. It's these little acts of doing what's right for kids, even when you're pressured to do what's wrong. It means not hiding behind the excuse of, I was just following orders. I didn't have a choice. I was just doing what I was told. Courageous teaching is saying, the buck stops with me. I know I'm expected to do things in this way, but that's going to break me. And it doesn't serve my students. So I'm going to do it my own way. And I'm just going to let the chips fall wherever they fall. And of course there's a risk to this. Of course there is. But again, what's the alternative? I'm speaking to folks who are at that breaking point, who are ready to leave the profession, who are only there right now because they can't afford to quit and they don't have another job lined up and they don't know what else they'd be doing. If you're at that point, what's the alternative then? Just burn yourself out and leave the profession? You can't push back on everything, but this is why I mentioned at the beginning that we're dealing with systemic and institutional problems rather than individual problems. Your burnout and exhaustion and overwhelm is not a you issue. It's not you. It's a problem endemic to schooling. It's the way that we do school in this country. And that means you don't have to push back alone. You don't have to imagine a better way alone. You don't have to come up with solutions alone. This is a time for educators, brave educators, to come together in their local communities. come together with their unions if those haven't already been destroyed in your state, to come together with their online networks and communities forged through social media, and brainstorm. Share success stories. Share what's working. There are lots of bright spots that are happening. For example, I'm hearing of a school district in Virginia that just gave teachers an entire week off for mental health. Another district in Wisconsin substituted a day off for a PD day. They said that teachers needed rest more than they needed a day of professional development, and they just gave them the day off. In our 40-hour leadership program that I run, we have principals who are constantly looking for ways to give teachers back their planning time, to protect that time, to say when this other teacher is out, we're going to cover the class in this way instead of having teachers go in there and cover for their colleagues so that they're losing their planning time. They're constantly looking for ways to keep the stress of the system from overloading their teachers. There are positive developments happening, and the reason that these things are happening in large part is because of the breaking point. Educators speaking up and speaking out about what they need, and setting limits on what they will and won't do. When enough educators resist, the momentum shifts, and that's when we create systemic change. The systems are not going to change on their own, and the folks who are influencing education don't have an incentive to change until they lose so much of the workforce that the system no longer functions. And that's the point we're getting at. We're finally and unfortunately getting to a point in education where the teacher shortage is getting so dire that districts are doing things like giving their teachers a week off for mental health. That would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. And it's a shame because anyone in education could have seen this coming. We all saw that coming, right? I saw it. Everyone listening to this, we knew this. We knew this was coming. But that's the way things go sometimes. They have to get really bad before people start to take it seriously. You know, like it takes sometimes really drastic extremes to happen before the folks in charge will finally say, okay, we're willing to do something different. This is that moment. Leverage it. Don't let it slip past. This is our transition point. There's no going back to the way we did school in 2019, and that's a terrible goal anyway. Given the stress levels of teachers and students pre-pandemic, we don't want to go back to that. And there's no way to tell what the future of school will look like. It won't look exactly like it is right now, that's for sure. And thank goodness for that, right? So I encourage you to use your position in education, use your voice, use your expertise to shape what the future of education looks like. And most of that work, again, is just how you show up with students each day. It's you refusing to stress your students out with tight deadlines and unrealistic expectations, no matter what the district's telling you to do. They can want anything they want. They can ask anything they want to. If you can't do it, you can't do it. If your students can't do it, they can't do it. If they're not ready for something, they're not ready for it. It is what it is. It's you refusing to internalize the pressure of everything that's supposed to be done. You don't have to take that on mentally and emotionally. You don't have to let these expectations that are so unrealistic make you feel like you're not doing enough, or that you're not good enough as a teacher, or that there's something somehow wrong with you or wrong with your students. Don't allow those pressures to make you think that, because the pressure is coming from folks who have probably never been in the classroom for a day in their lives. They have no idea what's going on. They have no idea what's best for kids. They have no idea what it's like to be a teacher. And they're the ones who are creating the expectations. You don't have to adhere to that. Do the best that you can and don't internalize it. Don't let it weigh you down. Don't let it be this emotional burden on you where you just constantly feel like you're not enough. They can ask for whatever they want. You can only do what you can do. So don't internalize those pressures and instead prioritize. Direct your attention to the things that make the biggest difference for kids. The reimagining of education is you speaking up when you can see that there's a simpler or easier way to do something that's going to be less stressful for everyone involved. And just saying, hey, why don't we do this instead? Can we try this instead? How about, since we have, 4 of our coworkers out right now. How about we say, these reports don't need to be done this week? Or these reports can, we'll combine this month and next month's or something like that. Make suggestions for ways that we can reduce the workload for everyone. And when that's not possible, you have to be okay with leaving some things undone or partially done because the alternative just isn't sustainable. You can't do everything that you're being asked to do to the extent you're being asked to do it, period. It's not possible. So make peace with that. They can want all that they want. It doesn't mean you have to deliver. You absolutely don't have to deliver on impossible expectations. You do what's possible. Think about if you have construction being done in your home, right? Some sort of like home renovation project. If you say, I want my entire bathroom redone in 5 hours, the contractor is going to say, I'll try my best. I'll do what I can. That's not realistic. There's all these other factors to consider. I have to do this, this, and this, and these things take longer, and I'm not going to be able to do this until tomorrow, but I'll do the best I can. And they get in there and they work the best that they can. And it always takes longer. And it is what it is, right? Like you as the homeowner can ask for this specific deadline, but if it's not possible, it's not possible. You have to have that mentality. Like, yes, this is what the folks in charge want. Nice to know what they want. Here's what's actually happening in reality when I have like actual live human beings in front of me and there's all these other variables and setbacks and slowdowns and challenges facing me. They can want whatever they want. I'm only going to be able to deliver what I can deliver, and that has to be good enough. It has to be good enough. And it can be good enough for you. That's the thing. Because if it's not good enough for you, then you're going to be stressed out and you're going to stress your students out. Let what you're able to get done and what your students are able to get done, let that be enough. Let that be enough for you. Your daily work is the resistance to a system that is crushing you and your students. We need brave educators right now. Stand up for what is right. Have the courage to focus on what matters most and do fewer things better. That's literally the title of my most recent book. If you want more support around how to develop this mindset and approach your work through this lens, it's called Fewer Things Better, the courage to focus on what matters most. The expectations on educators right now have been pushed to the extreme, and having fewer people in those roles has burdened the people who are left even more. You don't have to sacrifice yourself for the system. The way that you show up within the system can create change. Collaborating with other educators allows you to have an even bigger impact, and it keeps you from feeling alone, like you're the only one going through this and that you have to figure out all the solutions. You don't. Let's stick together. Let's have each other's back. Don't allow a small minority that has no idea what it's actually like to teach to determine the future of your profession. You are the expert. Your expertise matters. Your experience matters. The knowledge and the wisdom that you have gained working with students in the school system matters, and it is so, so valuable. This is a moment to be brave, be courageous, and doing what's right, doing what is sustainable, doing what's best for yourself, doing what's best for kids. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it.